How can you make £1,000 a month from a property you don't even own? That's £60,000 over 5 years. It's using a strategy called rent to rent. Make sure you watch the video all the way to the end, because I'm going to show you how I found this house, how I structured the deal, and what the numbers look like too. If you're here for the first time, my name is Saj Hussain. I've been investing in property for 15 years and I've been in business for 30 years. On this channel, I have 3 new videos a week just for you to help you get further faster in your property investing journey. So let's go on through this house while I talk through the numbers and the deal and how we're making so much money from it. What is rent to rent? If you're not familiar with this strategy, it's the idea of taking a property in its entirety, like this house, and then paying the landlord a rent for it. It might be a market rent. Then what you're doing is reletting it for more money than you're paying the landlord. Maybe breaking it down to individual components such as rooms, like what we're doing here, and the difference is the profit that you're making minus your costs. Now, this is also called subletting. However, the thing with subletting is it tends to have negative connotations because people don't necessarily understand what it means. Subletting is completely legal as long as it's been agreed with the landlord. So why is it that you want to use this particular strategy, and why is it that some people choose to use it? Well, the simple reason is the massive cash flow that you can make. So I already explained how much money we're making. I'm going to go into that in more detail in a short while. So cash flow is really the main reason that this strategy is so appealing. Is it easy? Well, I like to be completely transparent on this channel. It is hard work, but it's worth the effort. If rent to rent is such a great strategy, then why is it so controversial? Why are there such polarizing views around this particular strategy? Well, look, I think one of the challenges around this particular strategies, there are some unscrupulous trainers out there that teach it as a get-rich-quick scheme, which I can assure you it is not. It requires the effort, but as I mentioned earlier, the rewards are massive. Then of course you get those other people that don't really understand how it works, assume it's illegal, and they try and beat everybody up about it. Keyboard warriors, right? And it's quite simply they don't necessarily understand the strategy. So is this property our best property? Does it make the most amount of money? Is it the most stunning property? No, absolutely not, but it sits nicely in the portfolio. It generates a nice £1,000, or it will do as soon as we've got the tenants moving in, and it's a nice strategy. So is rent to rent for everybody? No, again, it's not for everybody. As I mentioned, really, it tends to work for those people who want to create cash flow, but it doesn't necessarily require a huge amount of money to start. It can do, but the really important thing is that you're doing this strategy legally and you understand the technicalities on how it's set up, which we'll talk more about in a short while. Let me tell you a little bit more about the structure of this particular deal and also this house. It's actually a 3-story Edwardian house in a great location, again in Birmingham. We're very close to a nice easy route into city centre. In fact, the new metro line that they're putting out is literally about 150 yards from here to be able to access. So nice easy access city centre, fantastic location. A big house. It's actually a 9-bedroom HMO. Now, it was already a HMO before I took it over, but it was quite tired. It needed some improvements doing, so we freshened it up a little bit. Hey, it's not perfect. It's not the most modern of houses, I said, but it certainly looks a lot better than what it did when we took it on, and the appearance in terms of how it will feel as a nice environment. So what we have is a communal lounge we're in right now. We've got 2 kitchens, we've got a couple of communal bathrooms, and I'll show you something in a short while that's quite interesting in each bedroom as well. As I said, we've got 9 of those bedrooms. It was already set up and licensed as a HMO. So look, before I tell you a little bit more about how I found this particular house and how I struck the deal with the owner, let's have a little bit more of a look through the house itself. So this is one of the 2 kitchens that we have in this particular house. They're not huge, but it's really important that there's lots of space. One of the challenges with having 9 tenants in one house is that is a lot of people. Now, generally speaking, I'm quite cautious of having large houses. I'm certainly not a big fan of 12 and 15 and 16 bedroom houses. They really start feeling like a hostel as opposed to a home. So to keep it homely, this works well because, as I said, we've got 2 kitchens. So we've got 2 sets of cookers, sinks, washer, dryers as well. So there's just more facilities as well as the other communal space such as a lounge, a conservatory as well in this particular house. So this is the space between the 2 kitchens, and we've got a number of fridges here. In fact, we've got 3 fridges. We have done some work on this property, as I mentioned. One of the things we've done is improve the electrics. So the electrics are quite dated, so we put new consumer units in, but we've still got a very old meter from the dark ages. But it means that the property is safe and compliant. These things are really important. Even if a property is an existing HMO, we don't just accept that everything is okay. We just review and check and make sure it's all compliant and all the certificates are going to be up to date. Not necessarily just a tick in the box, but making sure that we're comfortable that the property is safe. We're back in one of the bedrooms. This one is probably the most spacious one. It's about 17 square meters, a nice sized room, lots of nice features, huge windows with lots of light coming through. And of course, we've got lovely features like this beautiful fireplace. If you like that kind of thing, maybe it was all the rage back in the 70s and 80s, maybe not so fashionable now. But of course, with a property like this, you've got to look at what's sensible in terms of how much you spend on the property. Yes, we can take it out and make it look nicer, but then we have to plaster the wall. We've got to brick it up. We've got gaps in the flooring where the flooring is going to, it just wouldn't make sense. So something like this, we just put up with it. We know it's not going to be the nicest feature, but because it's a spacious room, we've got a nice big double bed, a wardrobe, a chest of drawers. We've got desk and chairs. We'll also have a small sofa with a coffee table in this room as well. So a nice size room, even though it's only going to be for one person, maybe somebody choosing to spend more time working from home. Let's now talk about how I found this particular deal. So this particular property is owned by a couple that have had it for quite some time. I believe it may have been their home at some point in the past because these are quite big houses, as I mentioned. They moved on, they converted it to a HMO. I think it was a student HMO for a number of years. And in this area, there used to be lots of student HMOs, but as the market's changed, things have evolved. There doesn't tend to be as many students that come out this far now. They're much more closer to the universities. Birmingham's completely changed in terms of how the student market and the HMO market is. Now, with this particular house, as the market changed, they started trying to let it to professionals. It wasn't really their core expertise. They struggled a little bit with that, and they decided to give up with how it was. As I said, it was a little bit more tired than it is now, so I know it doesn't look amazing right now, but believe me, it didn't look so good when we initially took the property on. So as you can imagine, the type of tenants they attracted weren't the best. They were paying lower rents and they were having lots of hassle, and they decided to call it a day, and they were going to hand the property over to a social housing company. So they turn it into social housing as a lease, so they wouldn't have to be involved in the process at all. They went to a solicitor. Now let me break off and tell you a little story. Now, I have my own mentoring group where I mentor people in terms of their property investing journey, and I'm part of several other mentoring groups as well. And I've had many mentors that have helped me over the last 30 years in business and in property investing. And one of my mentors used to say, when you're in property, it's really important you tell everybody what you do, right? So what's the relevance of that? The relevance is you never know who that person might know and what that might lead to. So it was actually the landlord's solicitor, when they were organising the paperwork for them, looked at it and said, look, are you sure you want to do this? I know somebody that may be interested in the house and taking it on for you. So it's actually the landlord's solicitor that suggested they have a chat with me, that I might be able to help them instead of what they were looking to do with the house. Because they weren't too sure what kind of people that were going to be living in the house. They were concerned about the neighbours, the impact it might have on them. But one thing they didn't realise, which I pointed out to them afterwards, particularly with Birmingham now being Article 4, once you change it from its current use, so because this house is a sui generis HMO, if we change it back to a social house, i.e. a family house, you'll lose the status of it being a HMO. And the only way you can go back is through a full planning application. And there are lots and lots of HMOs on this street. So that would not be an easy task. So the value would actually be lost by changing over. And this is something I hadn't realized either. So when I met them, we had a chat, we talked about what I do and how we could take this property on and manage it and give them a fixed amount of money with no hassle. That was the most important thing for them. A fixed amount of money that comes in every month with no deductions. They don't want to get involved in any of the maintenance and any of those issues. So the guaranteed income is the most important thing for them. So structuring a deal that would work for them, they wanted a certain amount of money. The property doesn't have a mortgage on it at all, which is perfect because those are the type of properties I like for rent to rent. Because from a legal point of view, there's no complications with the mortgage lenders in terms of what we're doing with the property and how it's being operated. Make sure you watch all the way to the end because I'm going to break down the numbers in how the deal actually stacks up. I've mentioned this particular house is a sui generis HMO, which means it has a special category when it comes to planning. And if you're interested in learning more about that, make sure you click on this video up here, which is one I released just recently, explaining much more around how planning works when it comes to HMOs. Earlier, I also mentioned there's something a little bit different about the bedrooms in this particular house. One of the things with HMO licensing and rules and regulations is they've evolved over the years, and what used to be the case no longer is the case right now in terms of requirements. So let me come on show you, which is something which is a little bit unusual, you don't see too often right now. Come on through. Here we have a lovely basin in the middle of a bedroom, which seems like a really strange thing to have. But as I mentioned, HMO rules have changed over the years, and many years ago, this was a standard requirement to have in the bedrooms. Many of the bedrooms in this particular house have the basin already in here. It really doesn't make any sense to strip them all out and have to make good with everything, so which is why we leave them in. But also something else has been done in this particular house, which I find a little bit unusual, is, come on through. A shower in the bedroom. Now, when we think about showers, we think about en-suites, but what we don't think about is walking straight out your shower straight into the room. However, that's how it's been created in this particular house. It makes no sense to spend all that money to strip them back out, so we just leave the showers in because that's how they've been created. Here is a great example of meeting minimum requirements versus what's actually practical. So minimum requirements, a certain number of toilets in the house of this particular size. However, there was no wash basin in here. So how do we get a wash basin in? Because a wash basin means it's just much more practical, especially with the environment right now. Cleanliness is really important. So we find clever little ideas like this, where the basin is actually fitted above the cistern on the toilet, which means a nice easy way to plumb it in and get that to work. Whereas otherwise it would have meant no wash basin in the loo. Before we get into the numbers, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and enable the notification bell so that you are notified when I'm releasing these videos. So let's talk about the numbers and what it looks like. So this 9-bedroom HMO will generate us about £4,100 a month from the 9 bedrooms. The prices will vary depending on the size of the rooms, the furniture, the layout. So the prices are different per bedroom, ranging from about £300 going up to about £550. Then we've got to pay the landlord our monthly rent, and the rent we've agreed on this particular house is £2,400, which can be a lot for a house of this size, but actually for a licensed HMO, it's not too bad. And that's an important point that I'm going to come back to in a short while. Then of course we've got our running costs. Our running costs are those bills that we've got to pay to keep the house running. So your gas, electric, water, council tax, TV license, internet, gardeners, all of these things, we average that out to about £75 per person for a house of this size. Ordinarily, we tend to do about £85 per month on a 6-bedroom house. This being a bigger house, you start getting a little bit economies of scale as well. So when we take all those costs off, so the rent of £2,400, your £75 per person for 9 rooms, we're left with around £1,000 profit per month before management, maintenance and voids. So it's a nice healthy profit from a property of this particular size. Now earlier I mentioned that the price what we're paying the landlord is reasonable, but the other thing that I haven't shared with you is that we've spent quite a bit of money on this property to get it ready. So when we do rent to rent, there's two types of costs to think about. There's the setup cost and there's the operational cost that I was just speaking about a moment ago. The setup costs on this, I don't have the final figures, but we had quite a significant contribution from the landlord to be able to improve it and get it furnished and ready, so that we can then pay the landlord the £2,400 a month. So what that means is, although our setup costs were very low, we're paying a higher rent, we're still able to achieve the cash flow. We are back in the room that we started with earlier on. They're just dressing the rooms ready for photography, which is being done today. And look, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please help me out by hitting that subscribe button and sharing this with somebody you think would also benefit from it. If you hit the notification bell, you get notified regularly. And also let me know in the comments what you enjoyed about this particular video and what questions you have around rent to rent. Let me know if rent to rent is a strategy that you would like to use. And thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.